Right now on the National Weather Desk, deadly tornadoes. A twister destroys an Iowa town, leaving death and destruction behind. And where severe weather threat is today. Severe turbulence rocks a passenger jet. We'll help you better understand what causes bumps and drops that we all dread when flying.
There are 4 causes of turbulence: mechanical, thermal, frontal, and clear air turbulence.
How does your garden grow? Some advice to help keep your garden lush and green during the upcoming hot summer months.
You're gonna wanna look to water at least 3 times a week.
Why is coastal fog so common this time of year?
The ocean warms up slower than land does.
And just how hot can the inside of your car get during the summer?
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Steve Rudin from WJLA in Washington, D.C. Violent tornadoes struck Iowa Tuesday, leaving widespread destruction behind. Many are dead, some were injured. Most of the town of Greenfield, population 2,000, about an hour southwest of Des Moines, was leveled. The town is only about 2 square miles. The view from above shows just how large and powerful the tornado was. Buildings were ripped off their foundations. Debris, including chunks of wood, siding, personal possessions, trees, and cars all littered the landscape. A hospital and retirement center were damaged. However, it's not clear if any in those buildings were injured. The town is now under a mandatory curfew. Our storm chaser, Brett Adair, captured this intense tornado crossing a highway about 45 minutes southwest of Greenville. He later got another shot of a tornado in a distance. Both twisters brought damage, including destroying buildings. Winds were so powerful, they flipped a car, leaving it in a field far from the road.
1, 2, 3 windmills broken by this tornado. That one is on fire.
Winds were so strong they snapped multiple wind turbines and damaged or destroyed many of them. More than 16,000 homes and businesses in Iowa are still without power this morning. More than 60,000 in Wisconsin. In the Badger State, Wisconsin is also cleaning up this morning. Of the 23 tornado reports yesterday, several were in the state. The Madison Metropolitan School District is closed for the day because of the storms. Strong winds downed trees and power lines, damaging homes and cars. Forecast forward, no threat of severe weather in Iowa or Wisconsin today. However, the risk stretches from Dallas to western New York. The greatest risk is a 3 out of 5 in Texas and Arkansas. Cities like Austin, Columbus, and Nashville have a slightly lower risk. Passengers on a Singapore Airlines flight were hit with severe turbulence Tuesday. One person died, but not confirmed if the medical emergency happened before or after the turbulence, and several others were critically injured. We want to take a closer look at turbulence and how it forms. Jeff Harris has more.
If you've ever flown before, there's a good chance you've heard a pilot or flight attendant say, "Make sure your seatbelt is on." Aviation consultant Dan Mellinson says that announcement isn't something to shrug off. Turbulence can be extremely dangerous.
It's very, very powerful.
When it comes to turbulence, there isn't just one kind. Mellinson says some you can see coming and others you can't, like clean air turbulence.
There's no way of really predicting, that you're going to hit a clear air turbulence section until you're just about into it.
He says there is some research being done to help predict clean air turbulence.
But it's a long ways from perfected at this point in time.
A professor of mechanical and nuclear engineering, Mohammed Gaddelhawk, tells us, along with the different types of turbulence, there are also different intensities.
Sometimes there is a sudden drop in the airplane, and that's caused by the loss of lift.
If pilots can avoid the turbulence, Gaddelhawk says they go around it. But if they can't, they have to fly through it, which is why seatbelts should always be worn.
Because you don't want things to be flying around when you encounter that change in magnitude or direction of the wind.
Flooding can cause a ton of damage and the losses can add up quickly. Portland, Maine meteorologist Emily Sansom looks at a Climate Central study that counts the cost of floods across the country.
In 2020, the United States had an average annual flood loss of $32 billion, with the West and East Coast being hit the hardest. Allegheny County in Pennsylvania specifically had $1.1 billion in flood loss. Now, closer to home, Maine's flood loss in 2020 was $191 million. Climate Central predicted a 13% increase in that total by 2050. That's close to $25 million. Counties affected the most were Androscoggin, Kennebec, and Penobscot. So as we enter the summer months, keep in mind severe storms and heavy downpours will become more common, potentially leading to flash flood risks. In the event of a flash flood warning in your area, make sure you move to higher ground immediately, don't walk or drive in high water, and be cautious at all times.
Turning now to the southern plains, where mainly dry weather is the forecast for the rest of the week. That's not good news for farmers. As meteorologist Corbin Voges explains, the month of June may finally bring some relief.
The next week or so looks to be very dry, so a lot of ag producers probably not very happy about this here in the Southern Plains region, southeast Colorado, Texas Panhandle, eastern New Mexico. But that pattern could change moving into the first week of June. We may actually get from a southwest flow aloft to a northwest flow aloft pattern. And what that means is we're going to get that cold air from the Rocky Mountains pushed over hopefully some warm Gulf of Mexico moisture in the lower levels. That's an unstable environment, can lead to thunderstorms on the front range of the Rockies, and if the winds are strong enough, that will push those storms in a southeast direction, and that's actually where we pick up a lot of our monsoon moisture here in the Southern Plains. The Climate Prediction Center has given us a 1 in 3 to 40% chance to be above normal for precipitation within that time frame. We're going from the 28th of May through the 3rd of June, so fingers crossed we can get some better moisture chances here running into that next month.
Time is running out for Mother Nature to fill central Texas lakes with rain. Last week's rainfall allowed lake levels to rise just a little bit. But looking ahead, rainy days are rare during the summer months. As Farrah Walton tells us, it wasn't enough to break the drought.
Central Texas hasn't seen enough rain this year. The Central Texas Water Coalition says 2.5 million people depend on the Highland Lakes for drinking, showering, and more. That includes Lake Buchanan and Lake Travis, the two water supply reservoirs. But those lakes are still experiencing low water levels despite recent rainfall.
But it's been low the last several years, and it has definitely affected us.
The lakes have risen some, though. Lake Buchanan rose 3 feet over the weekend, rising 11 feet for the month of May. It's now 68% full. The Lower Colorado River Authority, or LCRA, says Lake Travis, on the other hand, is 40% full after rising 3 feet. With Stage 2 water restrictions continuing, Executive Director of the Central Texas Water Coalition, Shannon Hamilton, says now is not the time to let up on water conservation efforts, especially as meteorologists predict a hot and dry summer ahead.
Your water that's going on your lawn is our drinking water. Your water that's refilling your pool, if you have it on autofill, is our drinking water. And we don't know how long it's going to take until we have a flood.
As temperatures heat up across the country, hot weather can make us feel not so great, but our bodies have a cooling mechanism. Here's meteorologist Chris Sutchin.
An early season heat wave moving into parts of the country. Heat advisories, heat warnings are likely to be in effect in the coming days. But your body has a great way to try to beat the heat. It is called sweat. Why do we sweat? Well, I'm meteorologist Chris Sutchin to explain the whole process. Core body temperature, ideally 98.6 degrees. As the temperature climbs, so does your core body temperature. This triggers a response from your brain to about 2 to 5 million sweat glands through your body to begin developing beads of sweat that will perspire to the surface of your skin. And as the sweat evaporates, that is a cooling process that lowers your core body temperature. Now, when the humidity is thick, this obviously reduces the ability to evaporate those beads of sweat on your skin, and it's harder to stay cool or lower your core body temperature. That's the beauty of dry heat, is that the evaporation is much more efficient. However, too, it's also very important to keep hydrating with water through the day if you're in those very hot conditions. Water is like engine body coolant, and as long as you have it in your system, you're going to be able to create sweat to help cool. But as soon as you run out of water, your engine's going to overheat.
Check this out. This is from rural Illinois yesterday. A dust storm blew through the area covering roads and farmland. It forced the closure of 2 nearby interstates. According to Illinois State Police, visibility was near zero. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, summer is less than a month away. We'll share some tips on how to get your outdoor garden ready for the heat. And we'll help you better understand how a thunderstorm forms.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We have midsummer-like heat and humidity returning to the Northeast tomorrow. Look at these temperatures surging in the 80s and 90s. We have a pretty low chance for any strong to severe thunderstorms on Wednesday. Good news there. That's 7 o'clock in the morning. We should see a lot of hazy sunshine. Thursday, however, there's a cold front moving through, and that cold front will be the focus for some showers and thunderstorms. Some of those storms may become strong to severe with the potential for damaging wind and hail.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Looking dry to start your Wednesday. By the afternoon, we could see 1 or 2 showers, perhaps a thunderstorm to pop up. And then we get into Thursday, better rain chances coming with the passage of a cold front. Some thunderstorms become likely towards your afternoon and evening. 1 or 2 could be on the strong side. Going into the temperature outlook, it's going to be a lot warmer for your afternoon. Highs in the upper 80s to 90 degrees. Still pretty warm for your Thursday, perhaps only a couple degrees cooler.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Here is a look at your highs for this afternoon. We are going to have mostly our highs in the low to mid 80s. As you get further south, we start to flirt with those low 90s, especially in the central parts of Florida. Now we are going to see a few of those isolated showers pushing into Alabama from Mississippi, but most of them will lose strength before they do. And then we do have another system making its way across the Midwest, getting into our area overnight Wednesday into Thursday. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw some risk for severe weather.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Summer is quickly approaching, and some gardeners are wondering how to keep all their hard work from shriveling up in the heat. Meteorologist Joe DiCarlo has a few tips to keep your garden growing.
Here are 4 questions that gardeners are asking the experts to prepare for the summer heat.
How much should I water? When am I allowed to water? Can I plant stuff? Zero-scape options.
All are important questions and considerations when looking to garden in the heat. We went straight to the experts for answers and spoke with Jeremy Bastian from Moon Valley Nurseries.
Roughly during the summer, you're gonna wanna look to water at least 3 times a week. If the plants are droopy and the leaves are curling up, typically that means you don't have enough water. If the plants are droopy and the leaves are curling in, especially on trees, typically that means too much water.
For watering restrictions, Jeremy suggests looking at the fine print and knowing specifically what's allowed and what's not.
That typically just restricts you from running your sprinkler system. You can still go out there and water by hand most of the time.
For planting,
you can still plant during the summer. The important thing to note is what you're going to be planting and where you're going to be planting it. When you plant those things in the summer, you just have to understand you're going to be watering a little bit more frequently just to get those guys established in the ground.
And since the summer months are typically dry,
everybody's seeing browning of the grass. You know, some people are tired of mowing. Another good option for Central Texas and for San Antonio in general is doing those zero-scape options, planting things that are a little bit more water-wise.
Coastal fog is common this time of year, and there's a very specific reason as to why. Meteorologist Christina Ernie posted this answer on TikTok.
It's that time of the year that we see lots and lots of coastal fog. Springtime fog is most present at the coastline. So why exactly does this happen? Well, the ocean warms up slower than land does. So in springtime, relatively cool ocean waters remain while the land begins to warm up. So when warm and moist air blows over the cooler ocean surface, the air begins to cool. As it does, it reaches 100% humidity and the water vapor condenses and creates ocean fog. Here's an example of what we saw early this morning in Rhode Island. Southwest winds bring mild temperatures to the area, but it's also blowing over the cooler ocean surface. The ocean waters right now are in the upper 40s and low 50s with our air temperatures in the mid 50s. Even as we see improvements later in the day inland, it's our boaters that have to take caution with that fog staying present just offshore.
Cool ocean temperatures can also lead to another weather phenomena called a cool air wedge. Let's turn to meteorologist Evan Chigvara to learn more about what the wedge is all about.
Well, have you ever heard the term cool air wedging, cool air damming, the wedge setup? It's used in meteorology often. You might be like, well, what the heck is that? So let's paint a picture here. You've got cooler mountain air here to the north and east, right? Over the Carolinas, Virginia, Maryland. You also have very cool sea surface temperatures, relatively speaking, just off the coastline here. It's where the Gulf Stream peels out into the mid-Atlantic. Every now and then you'll get a setup where a surface high sets up and this cooler pooling of air is forced to move to the south and east. And what that'll bring us is cooler, drier air. Thanks to, first of all, the orographic impact. The mountains block that air from spreading just due west. And then also you'll sometimes have a secondary feature like a surface low. And that causes air to pool and funnel into parts of the southeast. Now, depending on the strength of the wedge, sometimes that cool air stops in North Georgia. Sometimes it stops over the Carolinas. And in some instances, it can get all the way to the Mississippi Valley region. Really cool when this happens. It can be very rare in the summertime, but what it does is it subdues tropical air, that typical southerly flow that brings us daily afternoon rain chances across the southeast for a 3-month period is halted for a brief time. We typically have lower rain chances with that because your atmospheric moisture is lesser so, and it makes, this might be the most important, it makes for a manageable heat. Instead of your afternoon highs feeling like we're 102, your afternoon highs are very much close to the apparent temperature, and it drops our dew points.
We have talked about how thunderstorms are common during the months of March, April, and May. But did you know it takes 3 specific ingredients for a thunderstorm to form? Meteorologist Mike Susko explains.
First off, and probably the most obvious one, you need some water vapor, right? We don't have thunderstorms unless we have rain, and you need some kind of water vapor source. Next, we need instability. Instability is when you have warm air at the surface and then high aloft above your head, it's cold. That causes the process of convection, which is similar to when you're boiling a pot of water on the stove. And that also means the air is going to rise from the surface to high in the sky. And finally, we need a lifting mechanism. This can be a cold front. It could be just the sun heating the ground from during the day. Just like in this circumstance here, where we got a lot of moisture here at the surface. That's what you're seeing in the green. Throughout the day, that sun is actually going to heat the ground, which then in turn heats the air right above the surface. The sun does not heat the air because there's nothing for it to hit. It has to hit a surface, so that'll be the ground. And then that heat transfers to the air right near the surface, making it less dense, causing it to rise. And as it does, it will cool and condense, forming a cloud. This continues until those clouds cannot hold any more of that water vapor. And we see this in the form of rain and maybe even some lightning and thunder.
We are all familiar with lightning, but thunderstorms can also produce something similar called sprites. Meteorologist Joey Bettenhausen explains how they form.
Have you heard of sprites? And no, I'm not talking fairy tale. We're talking about weather today. All right, we're taking you to school today. Sprites are large-scale electric discharges that occur in the mesosphere, so higher up in the atmosphere. They occur high above a thunderstorm, usually around the same time as we can observe cloud-to-ground lightning. They can happen with some of those stronger storms, and they give rise to a varied range of visual shapes. They can be red, they can be blue, they can also be called elves, they can also be called jets, but we're going to talk about sprites today. Okay, so here's a photo of sprites. This happened early Monday morning in Tulsa. I want to thank Paul M. Smith for sending this in, as well as our storm chaser, David Gady, for getting in contact with Paul. And so this would be a sprite. You know, it kind of looks stringy, kind of leafy, resembles trees in a way. They're red because, well, they interact with nitrogen. So you have a lot of those electric particles, they're charged and they bounce around. Well, when they interact with nitrogen, they produce red colors. It's just kind of like how we think about the auroras mixing in with the different gases. So pretty interesting to note. They're hard to see with just the visible eye. Normally you need a high sensitive camera like the auroras, but next time when there's a strong thunderstorm, you can do it safely. Try to shoot that storm with your camera and see if you get a chance to see some sprites.
Now it's time to check and see the weather across the country today. We start in northern Michigan. This camera is in Mackinac City, looking toward the Mackinac Bridge. It will be a windy day with gusts upwards of 40 miles per hour. Afternoon temperatures will reach the 60s with a chance for a few strong to severe storms. This is Louisville, Kentucky. Stay weather alert this afternoon for strong to severe storms. Some storms may bring gusty winds and hail. Plan for highs in the 80s. Orlando, Florida will be hot and humid this afternoon, very typical for this time of year, with highs just around 90 degrees. And we end in El Paso, Texas. It'll be a sunny day with highs well into the 90s. And time now for a short break, but first, let's take in the views of Midway Lake in scenic Dawson County, Nebraska.
Well, a very good Wednesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. The good news is Iowa, you're going to be spared from any severe weather for the day today, mid-70s. But man, did they get slammed with severe storms and tornadoes yesterday. Those storms shifting their way more towards the eastern part of the Ohio Valley. So Ohio and Kentucky could see some strong to severe storms today. Moving into the day tomorrow, we got sunshine still across a lot of the middle part of the Midwest with rain to the west and south. But the showers and storms shift back in by Friday.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. 70s all the way up into the northern portion of Texas, but much cooler as you get into the 50s and 60s. You got some rain going on in Oklahoma there. A little bit of a cold front, low pressure area coming out. Could see some big thunderstorms up around the Dallas area, heading into Arkansas and into Louisiana. Meanwhile, everybody stays pretty hot and pretty dry. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi, everybody, and a happy Wednesday to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. I'll look at what we're expecting here in the west, 75 and sunshiny out of Denver, not too shabby. Meanwhile, up in the upper Continental Divide, we're talking about temps in the 50s, that cold, moist air feeding eventually into some severe thunderstorms as we head into the late part of the week in the northern plains. Seattle and Portland trying for drying today. Should be pretty successful around the Sound in the Willamette Valley this afternoon. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
It's that time of year. We can all use a reminder about the dangers of heat and your car. To help you understand just how hot your car can get, we turn to meteorologist Joseph Neubauer.
Summertime heat is quickly approaching. For some of us, it's already here. I'm going to show you how fast a car can warm up during some of these warmer months. Just on a 70-degree day, after just a couple of minutes, you're into the 90s. After 30 minutes, you're over 100 degrees. It just keeps on going up. An 80-degree day, look how fast you're up to 100 degrees inside of a car. 20, 30 minutes, by 60 minutes, that's dangerous heat there at an hour. And then for our friends in the south, a 95-degree day, you're off and running after 10, 20 minutes. And it gets way up there once you're at an hour as well. So something to keep in mind through the summertime months. Know where your kids are. Make sure everybody's out of the car. Same goes with your pets as we head through these next couple of months. All it takes is a little bit of sunshine, and that heat obviously gets going.
We'd love to share your weather content on air. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back after this. Thank you so much for looking in this morning. I'm glad you were able to join me. I'm meteorologist Steve Rudin from WJLA in Washington, D.C. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Good day.